So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our mini school on computational approaches to drug discovery using the Schrödinger software that is available to all of us at the CHPC. And again, with us this afternoon is Dr. Krishna Govender from the CHPC, sorry, that kindly agreed to give us this course. And some of you already heard that this will be the last lecture in this mini school, because next Wednesday is a public holiday. And I think when we planned it, nobody realized that, that next Wednesday was a public holiday. But we already agreed with Dr. Govender that maybe in half a year or next year, we will repeat the course and bring it to a more advanced level. So we will give you a few months' time to play around with Schrödinger, and then we will organize a more advanced course on the topic. Yeah. So Krishna, I think people are settling in. There are still a few latecomers that I will let in as soon as they come. You are most than welcome to start with your lecture, Krishna. We are all looking forward to see how the story evolves. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to start by just sharing my screen. I saw there was a message in the chat box too first. So Luke, yes, there's limited tokens that Schrödinger gives you access to, even on the CHPC cluster. We have considerable number of them, but not for all of the software packages that are offered in Schrödinger. So some of them have a limited number of tokens, one of them being Desmond. And unfortunately, because of the 64 token limit on Desmond, there can only be up to 4 Desmond jobs running at any particular time. So that's one of the limitations there. We will try to get more licensing for Desmond as the users actually start coming in. So the more people we get using the software and wanting it, then CHPC might be willing to actually increase the amount they pay for the license. On the plus side though, we have renewed this license for 3 years. So it's not like the license is going anywhere anytime soon.
That's
right,
cool.
So yeah, so just so you get a heads up of what we're doing. So, all right, so basically today what we're going to try and quickly get through is we need to edit the Schrödinger hosts file. We're going to prepare that ligand library, which I asked you all to download last week. And then we're going to do some docking with glide and virtual screening workflow. We're going to prepare a molecular dynamic simulation, and we're going to try and run that dynamic simulation. Unfortunately, with time or not on our side, we obviously won't be able to get through everything, but I can at least show you all how you run a dynamic simulation on the cluster and how you break it up into pieces. Because I have a lot of people that come to me often saying, oh, Dr. Govender, we run 200 nanosecond simulation, but it stops at like 100, which is obviously the issue, because remember, you can only get so many nanoseconds out in a day when it comes to running these simulations. So even if you run it on a GPU, it typically, you'll be lucky if you get about 100 nanoseconds in a day, or maybe 200. And because you have a limit on the CHPC cluster of 12 hours per job, your job is not going to get done within that 12 hours. You have to break it up into pieces. So that's something I'm just going to quickly go through with you guys to show you how you do it. So let's quickly just edit the Schrödinger hosts file, right? So to do that, you need to go to where Schrödinger is installed. So in the Schrödinger folder, actually not there, programs. Right, so Schrödinger 2022, that's the one I'm using. And in here, there'll be a Schrödinger.hosts. So
Krishna, sorry, we are still seeing your slides. Is that what we are supposed to see?
Oh, no, wait. I think I must just stop sharing and rather share my whole screen. Apologies. You're supposed to see
no worries. Thank you. That happens to the both of us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Prof. So let's see. Let me rather show this window. Okay, so there. You should be able to see my directories now. So you go into programs, wherever you install Schrödinger, then you need to find the Schrödinger.hosts file. So there's the file. You typically can't edit this file in its current location. You usually need to copy it somewhere else. So you can just copy it to your desktop and then edit it from there. I've already edited the file, so I'm just going to show you guys what the edit looks like, because we're just trying to buy some time today so that we can get through most of the stuff. So this first entry that's in this host file is tenant. It comes when you install the package. The next few, which is also in that PDF document that I've shared with you, they need to all go here. One is just for the serial long queue, the serial queue on CHPC, And then this one here is the main one, especially for the Desmond stuff. You have to have this in, because Desmond does not run on anything but a GPU. So if this entry is not in, it won't allow you to actually run a simulation or to write out the files that you need. So you must have this, right? So just have a look at that PDF that I shared with you guys, and you'll find all of this information in there. You just plug it in, and you can always come back to the video of this year to see what you need to do. Right, so let me go back to Maestro now. So, right, so we were in Maestro last week. So all of you know the screen by now. I'm going to first change my working directory because I made my working directory different to the one that we're currently using. So it's Schrödinger Mini-School. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you guys last week was to save your project. So you would have seen when you try to close the application, it asks you to save. So hopefully you'll save your project. Then you'll be able to open it in here. So in the Mini-School, there'll be something that has a .prj extension. So that folder, you can actually open into Maestro, and it will bring your whole workflow that you've done up to this point. So remember, we had our ligand from the active site, which was this, and then we prepared it and we docked it, right? So when we did the docking, I'm just going to pin this. Double clicking actually pins the protein. So you can then choose other things. Control click will then allow you to click on other options. Right, so now if I focus on the ligand quickly, right, so we saw that the ligand that was originally there versus the one we docked weren't too different from each other. Let's click that one. So there wasn't significant differences, which is good, right? So it shows that the algorithm that we're using is not bad. Now, the next thing we needed to do was actually prepare those ligands that we download. So what we're going to do is just unpin this. I'm going to first get the structures by importing them, right? Now, I downloaded them in my downloads folder, so I should find them here. When you do download stuff from PubChem, there's a number of ways to do it. One was the way I showed you, where you choose all the ligands and then just download a file. You can also do it via a Python script, where you can actually just have a file with all the names that you need, and then it will pull those from the PubChem library. So if you open this, you'll find there'll be a number of entries that are going to get opened. So it takes some time. As you can see, there's many structures, right? And there's 5 warnings. So if I quickly go to details, I'll see the warnings. And basically the warnings are telling me that some of these ligands have elements in them that Schrödinger doesn't know. And essentially, it's not that it doesn't know it, it's just that there's no parameters for these ligands. So the W, the AT, the PB, these are basically atoms which Schrödinger doesn't have a license for. So because of that, you essentially, those ligands will be eliminated. They'll be taken away. So especially with you guys that are using things that have metals in the center, you need to always make sure that the parameters are available for those metals. Otherwise, you're going to end up with issues that Schrödinger is going to complain. You'll notice these structures, though, are very flat because they're 2-dimensional structures, right? All of them, they're 2D. So only way to make them 3D is if we actually prepare these. So to do that, you can go to the tasks window and you just go to lig prep. You'll see I've got a lot of shortcuts on my menu bar on the top here. That's just because I added them. To add a shortcut, if you find the application you're looking for, you click on the star and it will add it on the bar that's just above your screen where you see a molecule. So if we do lig prep now, I'll just open these ligands to show you what it looks like. But you can choose whether you want to get the ligands from a file or you want to get them from the project table. So the project table has 1052. If you stretch this window here, you should see there's 1052, but I'm not going to now do that. Right, so with my lig prep, go back. Right, so there we go. So here you can then, if you want to, you can add infiltration to your preparation. There's files that you can create. You can say what molecular weights you want, different types of filters that you can use. Right, so that's up to you. For now, I'm going to leave it as default. And then the maximum size of the ligand must be 500 atoms. We want to use OPLS4 as the force field. This is just generating states within a pH of 7 ±2. EPIC is what I usually use. You can even use ionizer, but EPIC is the newer sort of tautomer conformer generator, which works quite well. And then you desalt, generate tautomers, retain specific chiralities, And then the output will be a Maestro file. So once this is done, you can just run this. So obviously to run this, you cannot see a window. Oh, you cannot see my window panes. That sucks. Only see the, oh, okay.
Yes,
thank you for involving me.
Yeah.
So if I do this, can you not see the link prep? Are you only seeing my one window?
Yeah, we can only see one window. Yeah.
Okay. What is happening with Zoom today? It's being very funny with me. Let me see. What can I do? Can I share my host?
You can share the desktop instead of the app.
Okay, now can you see both screens?
Yes. Now it
Can
works.
you see the link? Great. Okay. Thanks, guys. Now you see. Great. Okay, cool. So yes, this is your link prep window, right? Let's quickly walk through this again. Because I've got all of the structures in here, I can choose the project table, which will choose all of these structures that are 2D, and it's going to try and convert them to 3-dimensional structures. Then, as I was saying, it's just the criteria you can change. You can filter things out. The maximum size, your force field, your pH that you want to generate the stuff. Then epic, desalt, generate tautomers, right? We're retaining structures. Here at the end, you can either write out these files or you can run them. So this doesn't take too long to run because it's molecular mechanics, right? So it does generate significant number of conformers and tautomers when you actually run it. But it took about an hour or so on my machine. So that's something you can run on your own local machine. It doesn't take too long. So I've run this already, and then I'm going to just open the output file, right? So I'm going to import my structures from the output, which is during, actually no, here. Right, so this would have been link prep 2, because the first one we prepared was the original ligand that came with the actual protein. So link prep 2.out. And if I import this, I'm now going to see a lot more structures than just 1,000 and something. Because for each structure that it can generate a conformer or tautomer for, it's going to generate it, right? So you end up with a massive data set. Not very big. It's only 5,260. To me, that's not very big. I don't know about you guys. But it's not a very massive data set. Right? So 5260, these are all the different types of ligands. And you'll notice they're duplicates as well. Some of them, it's just a slight conformational change. Right? Same name, but just different conformer or different tautomer, whichever one. So now we have these ligands all prepared. They all look nice because they all have 3D structures to them. So there we go. Great 3D structure. So the next thing we want to do is we want to now take all of these ligands and we want to dock them to that protein that we did earlier. So to do that, we need to do ligand docking, right? So we're going to go to our task menu again. We're going to say docking. Right, ligand docking. Please tell me if you can't see, if you can see the window.
We can see it. We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Right. So here you'll see this window is exactly the same as the one we used previously when we did the original docking of the crystal ligand, right? Only difference is now we're going to be docking this various range of ligands here. So the receptor grid we already generated because remember we did this last week. So we can go and find that grid by going to our grid, which is glide grid, and we just choose the zip file. Right, so that's where the receptor grid is sitting. So it knows the file. You can even display the receptor if you want to, just to check that it's right. So here we go. There's our receptor. And there's our active site in that region, right? So we know that that looks good. So next, what we want to do is we want to use ligands that are currently selected. So the ones that are in the project table, 5,260, 5,260. So we want to dock all of those onto this active site. We can leave this as SP precision. You can keep all of these default. This should be sufficient for now. And then the outputs, you can tell you what you want to generate. So the post viewer is usually a good thing because it shows you how each ligand looks inside the active site. So I usually keep that on. Then at this point, you would go check your job settings. Okay, how many processes? Fine. You say, oh, I'm going to just leave that at 6 for now. Then we're going to write it out. We're going to write out the job. So in this case, it was glide doc sp underscore 3, right? So it's busy writing the job now. So when it's written out, I should get a folder inside my current working directory, which is that mini school directory called glide doc sp3. So let's close this. I'm going to go to mobile xterm quickly, and I'm going to cd to that folder, which is Schrödinger Mini-School. Right, if I type ls, there you go. I have it there, the glide doc sp3. So let's quickly go into this and see what needs to change, or what do we need to add to this before we can actually send this to the CHPC. What I'm looking at is the input file, right? The .in file. Now, as we know, we want to use OPLS4 and not 2005. So we need to delete that and change it to OPLS4. Now, when you run this on the CHPC cluster doesn't know where your D drive Schrödinger Mini-School. It doesn't know where that directory exists because that's a Windows directory and Linux doesn't know about that directory structure. So you just delete everything and only keep the zip file on the folder, right? So then we write the information into the file and we quit. Right, so next what we want to do is, because the input file is looking for that zip file, we need to have it in the same location as our glide doc input. So I'm going to copy it from my glide grid and the zip file, I'm going to copy it here. So make it clear. If I type ls, you'll see I now have a zip file in this folder. I've got this sh file, MEGZ, and then a .d. Now, basically what these different files are, the one is the input, the other one has all of the ligands. That one is the script we're going to use to run on the cluster, and the last one is your grid. So let's copy this file to the cluster. So to do that, I like to use rsync instead of scp. There's two ways, right? You can do an scp or rsync. SCP will copy your files and folders to the cluster. And if you do a copy again, it will copy those same files and folders to the cluster again. Rsync will do a copy once. And if those files and folders already exist on the cluster, it won't do it again. It will only update files that actually get updated. So this is why I prefer to use rsync. So the arvz is just telling it to shrink all of the files and folders that I want to copy now on my end, get to the cluster's end, and then unshrink them again. -- progress is just to show me what's happening on the command line. So is there a command? Yes, that's right. Franklin, there is the rsync command that I'm giving you now works for everything. So if I would suggest you use this rsync. But before we do that, let's quickly SSH to the cluster so we know where we're putting these files, right? So SSH to my username at lengao.chpc.ac.za. So because I have my password saved on my machine already, it should just log me in. Getting there. Right. So there, I'm on Lengao. So it says, welcome to Lengao. So next I need to do, I have to go to my Luster directory. My Luster uses my username, CHPC, and I think I made a mini school already. So, right, so I've got some folders here. Let's not worry about that for now. What we want to do is we want to see what is the current working directory, right? So PWD is going to tell us the current working directory. I'm going to highlight this whole thing because that's what I need to use in the screen next door. I'm going to go back here. Let's say rsync. I now want to sync up what? I have to tell you, I want to sync up my glide doc sp3 folder. Then I have to say where I want to sync it to. So I say -e ssh me at. Now this is where the trick comes in. When you're copying files to and from the CHPC cluster, don't use Lengao because sometimes the copy will die in between because the Lengao cluster is a logging node. It's only meant for you submitting jobs. To copy files to and from the cluster, there's either scp.chpc.ac.za or there's DTN for data transfer node. .chpc.ac.za. The location on these nodes is exactly the same as Lengao because the file system is shared, so there's no difference of where your files actually get exported to. Right, so I'm going to just put a /, there to show that it needs to go into that directory. Right, and when I hit enter now, it logs into the cluster node, which is the dtn.chpc.ac.za, and then it starts to copy my files over. It copies the directory, then it copies the file inside it, then the second file, and then we should see the other two also come to one, and then one more. Okay. Okay, so the zip file is a little bit bigger, and it also, the nice thing is it shows you the transfer rate. So you can see if certain things are going slow, then maybe choose a slightly different time of day to copy this stuff. For example, if you've got big files. Right, let's go back to the cluster now. So if I do a ls here, I see my new folders being created, right? So there's a day, glide doc. So if I go into glide doc, I now got these 3 files. So 1, 2, 3, 4 files. Now the most important file in this whole process is that, which is the .sh. And what I've done on the cluster is I've made your life a bit easier in that if you run a job on the cluster, you're supposed to do it through the scheduler, right? And you have to have a special script to do this. So just to make users' lives easier, I've written scripts for you guys. So this is like a job submission waiting. Sort of, yes, you could think of it that way, Frank, but there's no queuing when it comes to copying files. So when you want to submit jobs, what you should do is you first do a module purge once you logged onto the cluster. So module purge. And so that flushes out anything that might be in memory. Then we do a module load CHPC easy scripts. Right, once you've loaded that, it will load up all of these easy scripts that I currently have on the machine. So if I now type Q Schrödinger 2022-1, and you can just highlight this name again, I'll show you why. So once I've highlighted the name and I type Q Schrödinger 2022-1, it's now going to run my script, right, in the background. And then they ask you for your research program. So you put in your research program name. Obviously, yours will be different to mine. Now, what are we doing? We want to do docking, right? So we say docking. Then we put in that name of that file. Usually how you can do this is you just press the middle mouse button on the scroll thing. So the thing you use to scroll up and down with, if you've got something highlighted, if you press down on it, it should just paste. Right, how long do we want to run for? Yeah, I'm just going to say 2 hours. Oh, I forgot something. So at this point, I'm going to say no. Let me just correct something. Because I'm using mobile XTerm, the permissions on my folder are not correct. So if I do this, you'll see I don't have write access on my folder at the moment. So I need to change that. So I have to say chmod for users allow write access and do it for the whole directory on that client thing. Right, so there, now it's got write access. So let's go back and run the same thing again. So just use my up arrow to actually scroll through my previous command. I can do the Q Schrödinger again. Then I say docking. It unhighlighted it. There. So let's do this quickly. Right. So research program docking. Unfortunately, we all know we're suffering from load shedding, and so is the CHPC. So I don't know whether my job would actually get on now. But the advantage is I've run it already. So we will look at the results now. Right, so at the end of this process, if you type Y, it submits your job to the cluster. Now you'll see it gives your job an ID. And the way you check your job is you say qstat -u followed by your username. Right, so I've got lots of jobs, but there's the job that I'm looking for. It's right at the bottom here. So it's not running right now. It's running. We are lucky. So let's quickly check. We do a qstat -n1. It shows me that it's running on that node, right? So will this command work for an old version of Schrödinger? Yes. Deshina, it does. So if you look, here's all the options. So when you do Q Schrödinger and you just press tab after you've loaded the easy scripts, there's many versions of Schrödinger that I have. So it doesn't only work for the new one. It works for all of them. I have different ones for different versions because there were some changes that Schrödinger made to their files. Right, but anyway, we see it's busy running, and now you can see it's spawning more jobs. Now, this is the one plus of running on the cluster as opposed to running on your own machine. That for every docking, there are usually a number of jobs that get spawned. Your machine can only take so many. Now, with Lengao, you got the advantage that there's 24 cores on a node. So what it does here is I've set it to default to at least 10 jobs per node. So each node will have 10 docking processes running on them. And basically from there, the results can get generated a bit faster. So for that 5,260, instead of it taking 3 or 4 hours on your own machine, it will probably take like an hour or less on the CHPC cluster. So that's one plus of using the CHPC, right? So You'll see it's busy going. We're going to leave it to go. And then I'm going to come back to my machine. I'm going to quickly show you in the test folder, one that is actually finished. So I did this as glide doc sp2. Right, so these are all the files that get generated when the thing is done. So let's quickly go back to Maestro again. And let's try and load that data into here. So once you've actually copied all of your files back, I will show you all the sync to sync back once it actually did something. How do you submit your lig prep job on the cluster? So Samson, the lig prep, you would also write it out. Let me quickly check the files. So I usually do my lig prep on my local machine, but you can probably run it on the cluster. Let me have a look. Lig prep should also have a .sh file that it generates. So if you're preparing your ligands, let me just try and open this file quickly so I can see. I don't think I have something set up for this. This is probably why lig prep might not run properly. So I would suggest for lig prep, you rather do it locally. But if you must, just quickly see what this looks like. No, I think you can choose the docking option. It should still work. It doesn't replace this part. It only replaces these things here. So for lig prep, if you copy to the cluster and you use the Q Schrödinger, just use docking and it should work. So that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so now let me quickly just import my structures. Right, so I've already done the lig prep, right? So we've seen what the ligands look like. Now we want to look at what the glide looks like. So if we look at the output file, which is typically your PV, so this post view file gives you the output of all of your ligands. So we can import this. Right, so you'll see it's lots and lots of structures that are now going to get imported. So it's coming after a while. Right, so there we go. Right, 4,800 class different things, right? So let me scroll up here. Right, so if we want to pin our protein, we can do that again. We just pin it there. And then we can cycle through the different views. So if you click on this menu thingy, you'll see it allows you to view the poses. And there'll be a pose menu that comes up straight afterwards. So it sometimes takes a little time. Don't worry, Schrödinger does this to you now and then when it says not responding. It's just sort of eating through some memory to load all of the stuff onto the actual Maestro interface. So you just need to give it a little bit of time. So it's coming. At some point it will get there. There we go. Right. So now we can see it shows us, okay, this is what the ligand looks like. We can obviously change what we visually see if you want to change what the ligand looks like. Right. So it shows you there's the ligand. Okay. And then you can scroll through others by just using the arrow. So the right-hand arrow will actually take you through other ligands. And then you can see what they all look like. But what you want to do is you want to go to the table and have a look in your project table. What is the docking score, right? So if we quickly check the docking score here, look at my original ligand, which was redocked. Its score was -11.817. This ligand up here is -14.09. So this seems to be a better ligand than that one, possibly, right? But there's a number of factors that need to be taken into consideration. The size, how it's docked, what's the interactions. We're not going to go into the details of that, but we just, for now, let's say we're looking at this guy. But there's another way to do this, because as you can see here, you have to sift through a whole lot of data before you can decide what are your best ligands to choose. Did the docking remove some ligands? In this case, yes, it did. Remember, we started with 5,260 and we ended with 4,819. Now, this is why the docking or conventional docking is slowly becoming a thing of the past, because the algorithms they use are not great for removing lots of things, especially things that are not really hits. So what I usually do is the same approach that we use now for the ligand docking. We'll do the same task, but we're going to choose these ligands again, right? So those 5,260 of them. I'm going to go to tasks. And this time, I'm going to go to virtual screening workflow. Right, so I'm going to use this virtual screening workflow. So the virtual screening workflow allows you to choose files and not the ligands. So what we can do is we will browse for the ligprep files. So I'm going to find my ligprep files, which was ligprep2, and then those files. So all the output structures. So basically those 5,000 is essentially in that file. I can then choose different filtrations. Now here you can use QuickProp. Now QuickProp allows you to find the admit, so adsorption. It's basically anything that's related to the toxicity of a ligand, right? And then you can also pre-filter it by Lipinski's rule of 5, which is also an important property you need to use for these ligands. We can remove the ligands with reactive functional groups if we feel that they're not necessary. And then we can also add other criteria. For now, I'm just going to use those 3. Now the preparation, since we've already prepared these ligands, we don't need to do the prep again. However, if you didn't prepare your ligands and you only had 2D structures, then you would keep this option on. So for now, I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to click it off because I'm already selecting prepared ligands. The receptors, we need to choose our receptor grid, right? Like we did before, we need to go and find it, which would then be my glyc grid, and there's my file, right? So there, that's it. And if there's any constraints, we want the protein to not move in certain places, we can add them in. But for now, we're going to leave this. We click OK. And then we get to the docking part. Now you see the big difference with the screening workflow is that here it goes through a 3-phase process. It starts off with a high throughput virtual screening, where it does all of this and keeps only 10% of the hits that it finds from this first run. It then goes through the SP docking, where it then keeps 10% of the hits found in that one. And then finally, it goes through XP docking and keeps 10% of that. So essentially, when this whole process is finished, it only gives you a certain number of ligands. It's not going to give you like a massive bundle of different things that might not even work. So once this is all set up, same story, we can just write this out. We copy it to the cluster. We run the Schrödinger script. And one of the options you will find when you run the Schrödinger script, if I can quickly scroll, wait, I don't have it here. Let me see if I've got it here. Yeah. So one of the options when you actually get to running Schrödinger, you'll see VSW is there. So if you're running one of those files, you just choose VSW. You give the SH file, give the wall time, just say yes, and it'll do the job for you. From the preparing of ligands, if you decide to use 2D structures all the way through, it will all be done for you, right? So that's a 1+, that it does this for you. But since I've already run mine, I'm going to quickly show you guys what it looks like again. So I'm going to import another structure. This time we're looking at the virtual screening workflow. That's that one. Oh, and don't forget, make sure your zip file and this file are in the same folder. Because if it's not in the same folder, when you submit your job, it's going to complain that it cannot find these 2 files. So as long as those 2 are in the same folder, then you're fine. And what we want is the XP docking, and we only want those ones that say PV. So we only want the post-view files. And you'll notice there's only like 7 of them. Right, so if you hold control while you're clicking, it will allow you to select multiple. Then we hit open and we say import. And there we go. All of them are imported. So same protein structure, but then there's just different ligands each time. And as I said, there's only a total of 7. So let's just pin one of these proteins and look at the ligand. So you can see there's a nice ligand sitting inside this active site. Let's zoom in on him. All right. So then we quickly go to the table. Let's have a look at the docking score here. So here we find, remember with our previous docking, we saw, what was it, minus 14.09 was the best. But in this case, it goes one sort of docking protocol further, right? It goes to XP docking as well. So SP is not as accurate as XP, but it doesn't take as long as XP either. So this is why a lot of people choose to use SP for their docking processes. In this case, because we ran through all of them, the final scores we get won't correlate with the one we got from above. So here we've got a minus 13, minus 13, minus 14.039. And a couple of them, you'll notice the numbers are exactly the same. And then there's some which are slightly lower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this ligand. Right, and I'm going to view him differently just so I can see what it looks like. Right, so there, that's him. Right, so there we go. And then let's look at our ligand interaction diagram. So this, again, I put a shortcut here, but you can find it in tasks. So if I go to ligand interaction and we click on OK. All right, so there we go. Now, remember from our previous one, the original ligand interaction diagram had a glutamine 353 and an arginine 394 that were hydrogen bonded to this OH group. The difference here now is we've got a nitrogen that's also now hydrogen bonding to this asparagine 351, and there's a hydrogen that's also hydrogen bonding to it. And a big thing to note here now, this is an E configuration, whereas our original structure had a Z configuration. So will this make a big difference? It probably does, because I mean, look, we've seen the score actually change because of the fact that now that look different. So, and how big a difference that we're going to have to determine. So what we can do is, I don't know which structure I chose to do the dynamics, but I'm going to show you how to prepare dynamics for the structure anyways. Right, so while I'm here, if I select the structure I want, and I can see it on my screen, I can then go to the task menu, and I can say molecular, what do you say, dynamics. Right, so for dynamics, the first thing you need to do is a system setup. Right, so we set up the system. See something in the chat. Geez, why is it always difficult or also impossible to prepare some ligands from synthesized metallic complexes? So Samson, when you have synthesized metallic complexes, there are no parameters for those metals. Remember, you all are working on a conventional molecular mechanics landscape. So molecular mechanics is all based on parameters. If there's no parameters for it, it's not going to work. And unfortunately, Schrödinger doesn't have a very big metal parameter set. They do have it for the material side of things, but not so much for the bio side of things. So if you can find parameter sets that Desmond is willing to read, that could work. Alternatively, you have to look at other MD packages where you can parameterize the metal and the complex. And basically, then you put the two together. Because typically proteins are all parameterized. It's usually when there's a metal inside that there's always a problem. Right, so, okay, we're going to quickly now do the system builder, right? So the system builder is going to allow us to build the system and specify our water model. I'm going to use tip 4P. The water models, a lot of people have found success with tip 3 and tip 4. So it's up to you to decide what you want to use. Then you can choose what type of box you want. If you want the orthorhombic box, then we can just choose orthorhombic. And we can even show the boundaries of the box. So this is what the box will look like. Obviously, the protein will get moved to the center once the solvent is added. And we're going to just keep this default, 10 by 10 by 10. OPLS4 is again the force field. And at this point, you can go to your job settings and you can run this. So running it doesn't take that long, because all it does is just puts a big solvent box around this protein and puts the protein in the puts the protein and ligand in the middle of that box. So again, this is something I've done already. So I'm not going to do it again. But you can just run this one on your local machine. You don't need to do this on CHPC because you're going to end up waiting for the cluster availability more than the time it takes for this thing to get set up. Because it's all force field based and it's just one protein, one ligand, and waters, it doesn't take that long. So let's quickly import the structure here. As I say, I'm not sure whether I did that structure, but let's just quickly see which one I've done. So the setup. So you should see there's a Desmond MD. Desmond setup is here. And so this is my Desmond setup. The out.cms file is the most important for any Desmond runs, whether it be your MD or the standard setup of your system. Then we open this and voila, magic, right? So now you've got your solvent box. You're good to go. So there's your solvent. We can quickly check. Oh, I chose a different ligand. Whatever, it's fine. Doesn't matter. So let me quickly now select this ligand. I need to see it. Right, change what it looks like. Right, so there you see, there's your protein inside the box with the ligand sitting in the binding pocket. Now, conventionally, when you do MD, there's 3 that are standard, right? If you have a crystallized ligand already with your structure, there's 3 standard MDs you need to do. The first MD would be of the free protein, where there's no ligand inside the active site. The second one would be with the actual crystal ligand inside the active site after you've redocked it. And then the third one or fourth one or however many would be the other ligands which you are comparing to. So you can get a substantial number of MD simulations. In this case, we've got just the one that we want to do for now, but obviously the same process applies to all of them. So now once we've got this set up, we can then go to the task menu again, and we can choose our molecular dynamics as the option. So when you get to this window, remember, there's nothing in here right now. So Maestro doesn't know that the molecule that you're currently looking at is the one you want to run dynamics for. You have to load the system first. So if I say load from workspace, it's going to load that system into my workspace, right? And so when it does that, now you'll see, it shows me whatever the number contains so many atoms, right? So that's just the number of the ligand. Then we can change the simulation time frame to say 50 nanoseconds. I'm going to keep the NPT ensemble. Obviously, I'm not going to go through the theory of all of this stuff, guys. I'm relying on you to please go and have a look because you should know which ensemble works best for your system. Most of the time, NPT works reasonably well. And usually Schrödinger also does the equilibration beforehand. So it does the standard MD approach of everything before it works with the NPT ensemble. And then I usually relax the system before the simulation. And here you can actually change things. So if you want to, if you go to the advanced options, you can change how long you want the integrals to be, your time step, basically, your ensemble, what thermostat do you want to make use of, Langevin, nose hoover, and your Borestat as well. You can change that. The interaction cutoffs, how far do you want your cutoffs to be before it gets to the non-bonded interactions? And if there's any restraints, which typically when you're doing a ligand inside the active site, you don't really want to have restraints on that ligand because it's not like that protein has it restrained when it's in your body. So you have to just be wary of how you set that up. Now for this one, we can go to job settings again. And now you'll notice it only allows you to choose that one option, which is that GPU 36 one. Now, what do those numbers mean? It means there's 36 cores on a GPU node and one GPU that you're going to make use of on that node. That's basically all it means. I can then change the name to whatever, and then I can write it out. So I've already done this. And I'm going to quickly show you. So let me go. Oops. Oh, yeah. See, if you're not logged into the cluster for a certain period of time, it kicks you out. So I'll probably be kicked out on both sides now. So let me quickly go to my Mini-School, the Desmond MD job 1. Right, so this is the file that it comes out with. This is your SH file. The nice thing with the Desmond stuff, there's no need to copy any other files in here. Everything that you need is already inside. Your inputs, your everything are all there. And this SH file is the most important, right? So you'll copy this whole folder here over to the cluster, like I've done before. I'm going to quickly just log into the cluster again and show you that I've copied it over. And then, so we can go to command cluster users. What is the name? CHPC. Mini-School. Right. So there we've got that one. Right. So we go Desmond MD job 1. Right. So here's all of my files after the run has been done. But I typically would only add the green ones in this folder. I would have changed the permissions like I did before, the chmod, make sure the permissions are all correct. Then I would have run that module load CHPC easy scripts. Then I do the Q Schrödinger story again. And when I do the Q Schrödinger, I would specify this file, which is the Desmond MD job 1.sh. So let me do this. CHPC easy scripts. And then I'll do Q Schrödinger 2022. What? Oops. Yeah, you need to make sure you type things out right because then it just gives you an error. Desmond. Now with the Desmond, you see you can run the setup on a cluster. I've set things up in a way that you can choose the setup process. You can either run local or on the cluster. I would suggest do the setup on your own machine and only get to the MD part on the cluster. Right, so then you do this. And the wall time for any MD simulation is maximum 12 hours. So I suggest as the first, always try to use the maximum. I'm not going to submit this job right now because if I do a qstat for bilingual, I've set up a script that actually does qstat minus u, my username, and shows me on the screen what that actually looks like. So I've got a job running at the moment. It's been running for 3 hours. I don't know if this other one has finished. Because one of the most important things now I would like to show you, but unfortunately, I don't think it's done. Okay, it's too busy. So as you can see, if I cat the file, it shows me how many nanoseconds. So I actually ran a second job where I'm trying to get to 100 nanoseconds so that I can show you how to combine files. But it's not a train smash. I have another example. If this is not done, let's just see how far this went. So maybe if we're lucky, it went all the way to 100. No, it's almost there. It's almost there. So it's sitting at 93. Right, and also if you want to check your Desmond job, you'll notice when you do a qstat minus u, your username, and then minus n1, it shows you here the GPU on which the job is running. So if I go to GPU 4003 by saying SSH GPU 4003, and I type something called NVIDIA-SMI, you'll see the graphics card's got a lot of jobs on, but one of them is a Desmond job. And that's most probably my Desmond job. We can check by typing age top minus u Krishna. Just remember this number. What's it? 395141. So if I look, 395141. Okay. One of my processors is 395141. That's the one that's running on the GPU. So I know it's working. But if I find that I can't find my number here, then something wrong and I need to kill the job because I'm not really using the GPU. When you're done checking, you can exit and you go back to the cluster. So it's sitting at 93 now, but I'll show you quickly how we actually then generate a restart file. So how do you restart a simulation once you've actually finished it? For those of you that are interested, I'm going to quickly show you the rsync in the opposite direction. So I'm going to use that one again. So say I wanted to get that Desmond MD job back from the cluster. I would have to rsync from the cluster this time. So let's just delete that. Right. So the first thing I want to do is where am I rsyncing from? I'm rsyncing from the cluster. The folder I want to rsync was Desmond MD, or the job one. Yeah. So that one. Right. So I want to sync up that one. And I want to sync it up here. By putting a full stop, it will actually just tell Linux, look, bring me back my file, but bring it to my current location. So if I do that, you should start seeing this file syncing up. Obviously, it's quite big. We're not going to sit and wait for it now because all the trajectories and stuff will copy over. We're going to quickly just look at what things look like inside Maestro after we've brought the file back. So we can import the structure and we can then go to the folder where we imported it, which was Desmond MD job 1. And as I said before, the out.cms is the main one you want to look at. So we import this. And when it's imported, I should see at the bottom of my screen, or on the side here, there's a T. If you double click this, it will load the trajectory into the workspace. So that's busy. As you can see, when it starts doing that, it's trying to load all of the trajectories now. So I've got a 15 nanosecond simulation. It's now going to try and load all those frames into memory form. So when it does its thing. And my machine is not the slowest in the world. So yeah. There we go. So now at the bottom, you should see there's 1002 frames, right? If I play this, it should play me the simulation. And then we can see what happens to the ligand inside. I'm going to pause this now. Right? And then what you can also do is on the T, you can right click. Or double click. Or single click, actually. Yeah. So you can choose to load trajectory, but it's already loaded by default. It loads all the trajectory that's in your current folder, right? So, come on. Right. So, now one of the main things I wanted to show you is now say you've got your dynamics. You go to molecular dynamics again, but this time, instead of loading stuff from the workspace, we want to import it from a file because we've already run 15 nanoseconds, right? So the file that we need to import would then be the one that sits in MD job 1. And it's this CPT file, which is called a checkpoint file. If you import that, it will even say, this is a Desmond checkpoint file. Now the simulation you ran previously was already 50 nanoseconds. You need to increase this to say 100 nanoseconds. And then write this as a new job. If you write it out, it will write it out as, in this case, Desmond MD job 3, but mine was written as Desmond MD job 2. So if I quickly go and show you what it looked like, it was written as Desmond MD job 2. And there, you see 3 files. It's got the SH, the CMS, and the checkpoint. Because that checkpoint file has the information from where it last stopped in the last trajectory. So if you copy that to the cluster and you run it with the Schrödinger, it'll just continue from 50 onwards. But then you run into an issue in that now you've got a time frame from 0 to 50. And when you open up that 50 to 100, it actually displays in Maestro as 0 to 50 as well. You need some way to put it all together. So I'm going to show you an example on one of the things that I worked on very recently. So yes, okay. After running molecular docking on cluster, the glide doc PV file wasn't generated. What could possibly be? Okay, so Tosin, I'm glad you asked. One of the things is sometimes the files don't always get copied from the temp directory into your Lustre directory. So often if that does happen and you think the job finished successfully, I would suggest you go check this folder, which is mount, Lustre, users, and there's a user called Schrödinger. In there, there's a folder called temp, and in the temp, there's a bunch of users, and you should be one of the users there. And then you go CD into your directory, and then check what files are in. You'll probably see a lot of old jobs and stuff sitting there. And then in one of them would be maybe the output for your job, which you can then copy back to Lustre, and then copy back to your machine. Right, so hopefully that has cleared that up. So as I was saying, let me quickly go to my thing. Oh, also I need to be on a different node. The thing is going to combine the trajectories. I don't want to be on login 2 because login 2 is going to kill my job. I need to be on login 1, which is also a copying node. And all it's doing is we're combining trajectories. So it's not going to be a big issue. So I'm going to CD to the place where I have my files that I want to combine. So what I would suggest is you guys need to make sure that once your simulations are all finished, like you need, the main things you're going to need is the initial output file. So the first out.cms, which would be, in my case, so mine would have been that one. So now I need that file, and then I need all of these threads directories, the TRJ directories. You take all of the ones from all your runs and you put them into a single location, into a single folder, right? And then you do module purge and a module load. This time you want to load the specific Schrödinger version that you want to make use of. So it's CHPC, Schrödinger 2022-1, right? And then the command you run is, it's a long one, so I'm just going to look for it. Right, so this part here is actually going to run a tool called threads-merge.py, which exists in the Schrödinger software package. And then you would say, okay, my output file is that one. That's my initial output. So you must separate everything with spaces. And then you put all of the thread directories. So there's the first one. There's the second one. And put them in order, because the order you put them in is the order it's going to actually combine everything. So don't mess up the ordering. That's why I always number my stuff 1, 2, 3, 4 for the different runs, so that I know which order it needs to go in. Right, and then the final part will just be -O, and you give it a name. So if we call this merged, then what you should see happen is it's going to go through each and every one of them. Now, in my case, they should be more or less equal for the first few, but I think the last one I ran a slightly shorter one, just to complete 200 nanoseconds in total. So it does take some time, but not that long. Oh, there we go. So you'll see the first few, the frames are more or less the same, and it's only the last one that's short. But the cool thing is with this, it actually combines, doesn't matter what your frame size is, It'll take everything and put it into one big trajectory file. And then what you do is you then just copy the merged out.cms and the merged _traj, which would be two files that get generated. In my case, I already have them here. I only need to copy those two files over to my machine and open that one up into Maestro, and it will load the trajectory from 0 to 200. In this particular case, that's what I was trying to do. You get a simulation from 0 to 200 nanoseconds. So you would do exactly the same thing for any others. We're keeping in mind that you have a 12-hour limit on the cluster. So you need to make sure that you stay within that limit. That's basically it. You'd load it here and you should see the full trajectory. And of course, you can do analysis on this, which we're not really covering here. I just wanted to show you guys that you can restart MDs and stuff. So here is where I would stop. Let me first quickly make sure I have everything. Yes, yes. I showed you the MD. Yeah, okay. That's basically where I'm going to stop for now. And I give you all time for questions. And since I went so far over time, I would also give you extra time for questions. Let me stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Krishna, for another very informative lecture into how to use Schrödinger. I see you answered already, I think, almost all the questions in the chat, but everybody has the right to unmute themselves and ask further questions if you have. And please remember that this is the last lecture in this school. So either you ask your question now or never. So now is the right time to ask questions. Please don't be shy.
Samson, I see you have a question. So why do we have the track file reading up to 6? Because what I showed you there was a previous example. It wasn't on the current example. The current example only went up to 2. And that would have given us 100 nanoseconds in total. It was 50 and 50.
Thank you for that. Please.
Sorry?
Yeah,
I have a question, please.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I need to shed more light on my question. I noticed that you have the TRJ files numbering up to 6. So I thought if you are making like maybe 150 nanoseconds with the aim of merging them together, let's assume one is intending to run 100 and 50. I thought the output there should just contain just 2 TRJ files. So my question is, how do you arrive at that 6 TRJ file? What did you do and what was your intention?
Okay, so in my case, with that particular simulation, my gaps were 30 nanoseconds. So it was 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. And then the last one, I had to do a very short.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you.
Krishna, I think there is a new interesting question in the chat. Maybe you want to quickly answer that as well.
So if Schrödinger has fragment molecular orbital functionality to analyze ligand residue interactions. I'm not sure about the fragment molecular orbitals. I know Schrödinger does have some tools for molecular orbital analysis. That will be through Jaguar, but I'm not sure about the FMOs. You might have to just check with it.
Thank you. Are there further questions? Here, there's a Patrick raised a hand. Patrick, please just unmute yourself and ask.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask whether if it's possible to launch Schrödinger graphic user interface from the cluster.
It is possible, but it's a bit on the slow side. So you can, there's something called VNC. If you go look on our wiki page on how to actually use VNC, you can then have a desktop which you open up via SSH. And it'll look just like a normal Linux desktop. And then you can open up Maestro there. But it is, because of connectivity, it usually gets a bit slow.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please, I have a question. I don't know if this is what Jojo meant. Can one run MD on a portion of a protein rather than knowing that it is computationally intensive? If you have large proteins, it may take longer. Can one run, okay, maybe areas around the active sites, and MD simulation will just run on that, knowing that, okay, it may run a lot faster, please. Thank you.
Okay, so it depends on how big you think your system is, right? So with things like membranes, they are massive, but people are still running MD on them. And so maybe Desmond might not be your best option to run such massive systems. You then have to go to the open source tools that are sort of more coded for the GPUs, things like your GROMAX and your Amber, that allow you to scale up to more GPUs to run MD of a massive system. Alternatively, yes, you can look at the smaller piece, because sometimes it might only be a few residues outside of the active site that's important. So you don't need to do the whole protein. You can just do a piece of it within the active site. And then there's obviously the other method, which is in QMMM, which allows you to do quantum of the active site, MM of everything else, which can also be beneficial.
Please, do you have materials one can look up on that, on how to run those fragments?
I would suggest check out the GROMAX tutorial on fragment analysis or on membranes, because they show you how to do things.
Okay, thank you.
Who do we contact?
Yeah, sorry, Krishna, you just discovered it.
Yes, I see. Okay, so as far as recordings go, guys, it's already on the NITheCS YouTube channel, so you can find the recordings there. When this is done, Prof will also put this up. Who do we chat with to assist in running NIM workflow, maintaining the entire process? You're gonna talk to me. So there's nobody else that you speak to at CHPC. You'll eventually come to me. So you can always ask me via email or just do a help desk ticket, and then we can try and sort it out.
Thank you, Krishna, for that.
So, sorry, I have a question. Sorry.
Please, go ahead.
While you were delivering your lecture, you were trying to tell us that it's important we prepare the protein alone, simulation for the protein, simulation for the co-crystallized ligand, as well as the one for what that we intend to carry on weight, which the one that contains our docking product. So why do we have to do it that way? Why?
If you look at most journals and papers that people publish, there's a convention, right? That the reason why you're doing that way is force fields change over time. They're not the same force fields all the time. I could have run something 4 or 5 years ago and I use a different force field this year. I'm not going to get the same result. So because the force field changes, you need to show that it's still stable for the protein on its own. It's still working well for the protein with the crystallized ligand. And then what does the differences look like when you actually incorporate your ligand? So just for comparison purposes.
So I noticed that the last time I ran the protein alone without the ligand, the native ligand there, or without any ligand, I didn't get any result. I thought I carried you along then when you instructed me that I must put the ligand inside. So as things changed, or I wasn't getting it right.
So your protein without the ligand involved, it should definitely give you out. Remember, your output doesn't come into your folder. It's probably sitting on the temp directory. So you must just go check that Schrödinger temp directory, because sometimes it doesn't copy back. There have been issues with networks and stuff at CHPC, so they get stuck there. You have to go copy it yourself. So you must just have a look if it didn't get stuck.
Okay,
thank you. One last chance to ask questions. Krishna, I don't see raised hands, and I think you answered all the questions in the chat, and you will receive soon emails from our participants. So Krishna, thank you so much for this really nice introduction to Schrödinger, how to use it, what it can do, and so on and so forth. It was really very, very interesting for all of us. And I'm sure there will be lots of takers if maybe in half a year or next year we organize a follow-up course, maybe going into more detailed, into more advanced topics of the use of Schrödinger. Yeah? In the meantime, everybody knows now how to access it on the CHPC, and I'm sure you will have many more users in the near future. So Krishna, thank you so much again. Thank you to all the participants for being with us this month. Please remember, next week, Wednesday, is a public holiday in South Africa, so we won't have a lecture. So today was the last lecture of this mini school. And in May, 2 weeks from now, we will start another very interesting mini school on the use of quantum espresso. Yeah, so please be with us again next month. Yeah, so Krishna, thank you very much again. Yeah, and we will stay in touch, and I'm sure the participants will find you if they need more assistance. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me for.
Yeah, no, it was a big pleasure. Thank you so much. We will stay in touch, and we'll organize many more such courses in future. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good afternoon, and we're looking forward to see you in the near future again in our series here. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye. All the best. Bye, Krishna. Thank you very much.